Mr. Wilson, you have an opportunity, just like during any of the other phases of. Well, let me just finish real quick. Any other phases during the case, if you want to address the court, I would permit you to do that. Obviously, everything's recorded, but you would have that opportunity if you wish. No one can prevent you from addressing the court if you wish to, and no one can make you address the court if you don't want to. So it is a decision that's solely left up to you if you want to address the court or not.
Not today. Later, when I come back, I will. Today, okay. No, I won't.
The Two Faces of Wade Wilson, Deadpool versus a chilling real-life case. Welcome back, everyone. Today's episode is going to be a bit of a roller coaster, but hang on to your seats because we're also diving into a much darker story that shares a chilling connection to the name Wade Wilson. It's a tale that blurs the line between fiction and reality, but this time, reality bites hard. This is the tale of two Wade Wilsons, so let's get into it. But in real life, the story of another Wade Wilson, tragically, has no humor. We have another Wade Wilson, but this isn't a comic book character. This is a real man, and sadly, his story doesn't end with quips and explosions. It ends in tragedy. In 2019, a man named Wade Wilson was convicted of a brutal double homicide in Cape Coral, Florida. A far cry from the charming rogue we see in the Deadpool movies, this Wade Wilson took the lives of two innocent women, Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz, within just a few hours of each other. The shocking part? He allegedly told police, "I would do it again." This real-life Wade Wilson met his first victim, Christine Melton, at a bar. According to reports, they went home together. But within hours, he strangled her to death. The horror didn't end there. Later the same day, Wade saw Diane Ruiz, a mother of two, walking home from work. After asking her for directions, he convinced her to get into his car. What happened next? He strangled her too, leaving her body in a parking lot. But the actions of this real-life Wilson were nothing but cold, calculated, and terrifying. In court, Wade Wilson's defense didn't deny that he was responsible. Instead, his lawyers claimed he was heavily under the influence of drugs and wasn't in his right mind when the murders happened. But here's the kicker. During the trial, Wilson allegedly confessed multiple times. He even called his father and told him about the murders.
He said he needed help. He had done something that he couldn't take back.
Did he indicate that he and his girl had gotten into an argument?
Yes, ma'am.
And who was his girl that you were aware of at the time?
I just knew her as Mila.
And did it seem that he wanted your help because of this argument?
Yes, ma'am.
When he called you, were you actually at work?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you able to really give your attention and time to him to try to help him at that point?
No, ma'am.
So what did you tell him when he was asking for your help?
I just told him to call me back around dinner time. I'd be done working and we'd figure it out.
And did you at some point have a conversation with your wife about him getting in touch with you wanting your help?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, during the time that he was supposed to call, about what time was he supposed to call back?
I told him around dinner time.
Now, between the time he first called that day and dinner time, did you receive a call from a detective?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that detective looking for your son?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, when the detective was looking for your son, did you have any idea at that point of what had happened?
No, ma'am.
Did the detective want you to try to help them get in touch with your son?
She just gave me a number and said if he calls you back, we need to talk to him.
Okay. Now, did he end up calling you later that evening?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did he tell you in that call that evening?
The final call?
Nope, the call before the final call.
He just told me, he did something. There was two people gone that would not be back. He said, I'm a killer. I just told him to call me back. I just thought it was another story,
So at this point, when he says that there were two people that wouldn't be with us and that he was a killer, did you put a lot of weight into that?
No, ma'am.
Do you think he was just telling you a story?
He's a good storyteller.
So did he then call you back a third time?
Yes, ma'am.
What time did he call you back?
It was around 10 o'clock.
I want to go back to that dinner time call. When he talked about these two people who were no longer with us and that he was a killer, did he show any type of remorse?
No, ma'am.
So let's go now to the 10 o'clock call. Again, your wife knew about kind of what was going on during that day.
Yes, ma'am.
And when he called back at 10, did he go into more details about what he had told you earlier?
Yes, ma'am.
So let's start with the first girl. If you could tell the jurors, what did he tell you?
He just said he met a girl at a bar. They went back to her house, hung out for a little bit, and then she fell asleep.
What did he say happened after she fell asleep?
He said he got on top of her and choked her.
What name did he call her? Did he refer to her in a derogatory term?
He said, I choked that bitch.
Okay. And what did he say he did after he choked her?
He said he stayed in the house for a little while, and then he rolled her up and was going to try to put her in her trunk, but he couldn't lift her.
Did he say why he was unable to put her in her trunk?
He said that he felt like rigor mortis had started to set in.
And does rigor mortis make your body stiff? You didn't know?
I think so. Yeah.
So he just told you that that was the reason that he couldn't lift her and get her into her trunk?
Yes, ma'am.
And when he said her trunk, it was the trunk of her car he was going to put her in?
Yes, ma'am.
So what did he tell you he did when he couldn't get her body into her own trunk?
He left her there and took her car.
What did he say about the second girl?
He said he saw her walking down the street and stopped and asked her for directions. And she got in the car with him.
What did he say happened once she got in the car with him?
He said he reached over and choked her.
And did he tell you that he choked her while he was driving?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, what did he say happened after he choked her?
He said he was looking for a place to put her body.
Did he find a place where he eventually dumped her body?
Yes, ma'am.
What did he tell you about the situation when he got to the place where he was going to dump her body?
He said that he pulled her out of the car and realized that she was still breathing.
So what did he tell you he did when he realized she's still breathing?
He said he got back in the car and ran her over until she looked like spaghetti.
As he's telling you all these things,
as if it were something routine. During closing arguments, the prosecution stated that these murders were for the sake of killing.
Accounting procedure, but instead makes a reasoned judgment based on the totality of the circumstances. In reaching this decision, the court is mindful that because death is a unique punishment in its finality, its application is reserved only for those cases where the most aggravating and least mitigating circumstances exist. The law never requires the imposition of a death sentence. In this case, the totality of the circumstances indicates the defendant, with premeditation, beat and strangled Christine Melton in her home before stealing her vehicle and driving to meet his girlfriend, Melissa Montanez. After Montanez refused to get into the car with him, the defendant battered her in broad daylight. The defendant told law enforcement, when Ms. Montanez managed to flee from the defendant, he fled the scene and drove back to Cape Coral, where he decided that he would murder another person. He saw Diane Ruiz walking to work and pulled over, pretending to ask for directions. She got into the car to provide directions, but the defendant strangled her when she tried to exit. He then drove to an empty lot, strangling her into unconsciousness at least one additional time on the way there. When she tried to flee from the car, he drove over her at least one time, inflicting mortal injuries to her spine, ribs, and neck. The evidence showed that both murders were heinous, atrocious, and cruel, and that the second murder was cold, calculated, and premeditated. The defendant inflicted serious physical and emotional pain to the victims. Moreover, the defendant committed the murders while on probation for prior felony convictions, and he committed 2 first-degree murders contemporaneously with each other and with grand theft of motor vehicle, battery, and burglary of a dwelling. There were no statutory mitigating circumstances that were established, but the court considered the non-statutory mitigating circumstances presented by the defendant. Out of 13 enumerated non-statutory mitigating factors, the court found that 10 had been established. Out of those established, 6 were given little weight. The totality of the mitigating circumstances indicates that the defendant suffers from drug use from a young age, along with undiagnosed and untreated mental health issues of some kind. He felt abandoned by his biological parents, but had a devoted adoptive family who raised him in a supportive and loving environment. Defendant did not resist law enforcement when arrested and confessed fully to both murders. The court has further considered giving great weight to the advisory verdict of the jury, who recommended that the death penalty be imposed by a vote of 9-3 on count 1 for the murder of Christine Melton and a vote of 10-2 on count 4 for the murder of Diane Ruiz. The court recognizes that there is no mathematical formula for considering the aggravating and mitigating factors. It is not enough to weigh the number of aggravators against the number of mitigators. The court carefully considered the nature and quality of each aggravator and mitigator. Having reviewed all of the aggravating factors proven beyond a reasonable doubt and all of the mitigating circumstances reasonably established by the evidence, the court finds that the aggravating factors greatly outweigh mitigating circumstances. Given the facts of the case, nothing in defendant's background or mental state would suggest that a death sentence is inappropriate. This court's review of other reported capital cases has led the court to conclude that the death penalty is not disproportionate in this case. Under the totality of the circumstances and evidence, the court finds no basis to override the jury's verdict. The totality of the circumstances warrants that the defendant, Wade Stephen Wilson, be sentenced to death for each count of first-degree murder.
They were methodical, heartless. The imagery of strangulation, described as life slipping through someone's hands, is something no family should ever have to endure. There's something eerie about the name Wade Wilson being linked to both an iconic, fictional anti-hero and a real-life criminal who committed horrific acts. It makes you think, doesn't it? In movies, we cheer for Deadpool's antics. But in reality, violence and murder are no laughing matter. This case reminds us how easily life can be taken and how the entertainment we enjoy can sometimes distort our view of real-world tragedies. We must remember that real people like Christine and Diane lost their lives at the hands of a very different Wade Wilson. So, where does this leave us? While we can continue to enjoy Deadpool's sarcasm, wit, and R-rated action, we must always be mindful of the line between fiction and reality. It's easy to blur the two, especially when life throws us stories like this one, where the name Wade Wilson is associated with such contrasting characters. As for the real-life Wade Wilson, a jury recommended the death penalty, but nothing can ever fully heal the loss felt by the families of Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz. So what do you think of this story? The contrast between Deadpool's Wade Wilson and the real-world criminal is startling, right? Let's keep the conversation going in the comments below. How do you feel about the balance between entertainment and real-world violence? Also, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the world of pop culture, true crime, and everything in between. Stay safe, stay informed, and we'll see you next time.